If you are excited for the Khabib vs Gaethje fight, then be sure to show this by smashing the like button. Welcome back everybody to Keenan K TV. After Justin Gaethje's upset and dominant victory over Tony Ferguson, we are now lined up with a unification fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov for the undisputed UFC Lightweight Championship. It is a stylistic matchup that has been seriously overshadowed by the Tony vs Khabib fight, but in reality, it is a very interesting matchup and a very dangerous matchup for both competitors. So with that said, let us in this episode take a closer look at why Justin, the human highlight reel machine, can defeat Khabib the Eagle Nurmagomedov. I will be making a similar video where I talk about Khabib defeating Gaethje, so be sure to like and subscribe to my channel to stay notified. Now with that being said, let's jump right into the video. Justin Gaethje going up against Khabib Nurmagomedov is going to be a fight in which we have two fighters with pretty similar backgrounds. We have Justin Gaethje, who comes from a wrestling background where he became the Division I All-American champion and then made his transition into MMA. Khabib has had a pretty similar background, but he was obviously the Sambo world champion before going into MMA. Now, Sambo was very different from wrestling, but we cannot really overlook the fact that Justin Gaethje is probably the best wrestler that Khabib has faced, and with that presents a different dynamic than any other fighter would really present towards him. For example, when taking a look at Tony Ferguson, Tony throughout his entire UFC run was never really a fighter who would shoot him for takedowns and keep his opponents down. Now, I'm not saying that Justin Gaethje has been doing that, no, but he has the ability to do that. Being a fighter with a D1 wrestling background, you are really left surprised as to why he hasn't really been fighting towards his strengths. Now, really, if you think about it, the worst thing that you can do in terms of your growth is just go ahead and continuously do the same trick over and over again. As an MMA fighter, it is very important to continuously grow, get better, and expand your arsenal. So when Justin Gaethje does not decide to wrestle his opponents, he has to depend on different skills to bring him the victory. And because of this, he has improved to a point where he has been able to defeat high-level strikers such as Edson Barboza by knockout, Donald Cerrone by knockout, most recently Tony Ferguson by stoppage. So it is safe to say that Justin Gaethje is no longer just a wrestler, whereas Khabib Nurmagomedov, if you take a look at his game, he does not want to engage in such fights because it really puts him at a risk of defeat. And defeated Justin Gaethje has been twice by Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez. And if you take a look at Khabib, there are no defeats to be found, which is why exactly he is the undefeated, undisputed, most dominant fighter the UFC has ever seen. Coming back to Gaethje, however, we have now a fighter with a great wrestling background. Not only that, amazing power in his hands, great footwork, and overall is a very tough fighter. Now, fighting somebody like Khabib, Justin Gaethje is, in my opinion, one of the few fighters who is perfectly made to fight somebody like Khabib. Gaethje does not really give his opponents too much respect. He does not give him too much ground to work with. He is a fighter who gets going and tries to get the fight going in his favor immediately. He fights his fight most importantly. He never really gets dragged into a fight where the opponent is leading him, and especially now that he has improved his game, became a little bit more calm, more calculated, he is just a completely different fighter from what he used to be. He used to be a fighter who just came forward immediately and a brawl began. And in a brawl, you never know who can come out on top, and because of that, we obviously had him lose 2 fights. And one thing we know is the fact that Khabib is never going to be getting himself dragged into a brawl, ever. So if the Justin Gaethje of a few years back showed up and fought him, it would have been a pretty bad outcome. But this is a new, improved Justin Gaethje, and I believe his striking style alone is very dangerous for Khabib. So let us take a closer look at the striking department in this matchup. When analyzing a fighter like Khabib, I can comfortably say that he is a fighter who is always wanting to be in control, and when he is in control, that is when he starts seeing success coming out of his performances in both the stand-up department and the grappling department. Khabib is not the only fighter who made improvements, right? Because if you take a look at Khabib from his first day in the UFC compared to now, it is just a night and day difference. Overall, his approach became more calculated, his stand-up became a lot more crisp, he was always a quick and powerful fighter, but now he's a lot more educated, and both fighters right now are exactly that. They are educated in their fields, but I do believe that the more educated fighter in the striking department is Justin Gaethje. If we take a look at how he fights, we can see a fighter who stands his ground, is a very smart fighter with his head movement, has great blocking, does not get backed up too much, if ever, has a great jab and terrific leg kicks. Now these are all signs of a fighter who Khabib is going to have a hard time moving back against the fence. We know that Khabib is a fighter who likes to systematically break down his opponents. You will never really see Khabib go into a fight and completely just shoot for a double leg, pick up the opponent, slam him to the mat, and then just get a TKO finish in an instant. It is a lot more mechanical than that. So Khabib is a very smart fighter who fights smart, but sometimes fighting a bit too smart can hurt you, and fighting somebody like Gaethje, you don't want to get hurt. So when the opening of the fight starts, you're not going to be seeing Justin Gaethje immediately come forward like Conor McGregor and just blast him with a left straight or a high kick. You won't see that from him. He will come forward and immediately set his ground, a space in which Khabib is going to be having a very hard time taking away from Justin. And with that, you're not really going to be expecting Justin Gaethje to be backed up immediately, because Khabib is going to be coming forward but really just bounce around and find his range. Khabib does not get his jab going immediately, he gets his footwork going, he gets outside movement going, and with this movement, Khabib is really just analyzing his opponent. He is analyzing the distance, he is just looking at what he can do in order to break through the guard, break through the distance, gain respect, and start pressing the opponent. But that is exactly the biggest problem Justin Gaethje opponents had to figure out, because Justin is a fighter who is very hard to move back. He is going to be coming forward with a quick jab, strong jab, and he will immediately press you. But not only that, he is not going to be a fighter who you have to think about as a pure boxer. He is very good at mixing it all up, and when you're fighting somebody like Khabib, you have to keep him guessing. Go to the body, go to the legs, and if you think about it, you have never really seen somebody really go into a fight against Khabib and target the legs and break his legs down. Every opponent Justin Gaethje has faced had to face that. Everybody got their legs chopped down, and it is not really, and these leg kicks don't come from a far distance that you can, maybe catch and drag him to the mat with. These are leg kicks that just come out of nowhere. He doesn't really swing them, he just really snaps them out of the stance he is currently in. There is no wind up, there is no telegraphing, and they are very powerful. And the odd thing about them is Gaethje is terrific with kicking the inside of the leg, taking away the base completely. And with that, you kind of have to take away Khabib's footwork and mobility when he's being pressed, because if you think about it, Khabib is not going to be coming forward immediately and pressuring Justin Gaethje. He will look, move around, take the outside of the octagon if need be, and then start getting into the groove with his jab, and then start walking the opponent down. But it is exactly that opening moment where Justin Gaethje can get going immediately. And then we have to think about this. How good is Khabib really defensively? Khabib has great footwork. In terms of head movement, I don't really believe that he has the best head movement in the division. His best defense is his offense, but if you take away the offense, you are left with great footwork. But footwork can get you in serious trouble if you're fighting somebody like Justin Gaethje, who comes forward, presses you, and then takes away your footwork with tremendous leg kicks. Because the more you move around, the more distance and the more room you give somebody like Gaethje to get his distance going and to get those leg kicks going. And the more he starts to get hit with those leg kicks, the more that Khabib will stop moving all too much. And the moment Justin Gaethje can get Khabib to be a stationary target, he then has to worry about Khabib's quick, snappy boxing, right? Not really, because Khabib, when he's being pressured, he does not really throw that many punches. It is just a quick punch or two to regain distance and then to get out of trouble if he's being pressed seriously. So what this really means for Justin Gaethje is the fact that he's going to be able to not only take away footwork, but he's going to be having a pretty passive Khabib Nurmagomedov to deal with when he's able to pressure him, because that is the only way Justin Gaethje can defeat Khabib, and that way is to fight the way he has always fought. Just like Tony Ferguson, who was a very great offensive fighter who never really lets his opponents rest, that was also the reason why he is also a great stylistic matchup for Khabib Nurmagomedov, because Tony has great teep kicks, long-range arsenals, great close-range elbows, and great cardio to keep it all up. When you take a look at Justin Gaethje, he has similar abilities. He doesn't have these long-range teep kicks, head kicks, but he has great inside leg kicks, outside leg kicks, and these kicks, I cannot really overemphasize how strong they are, really. And then he has a physically strong body that is very hard to move around. Tony Ferguson was a fighter who was thin, right? So Khabib would have his way a lot more if he decided to come forward and, be the fighter who was physically the stronger fighter in there. But when Justin Gaethje fought Tony Ferguson, we saw exactly the same thing. Justin Gaethje, being the physically stronger fighter, was able to stand his ground and really beat the fighter down. But Khabib does not want to engage in a fight where it is close range and up close and face to face, and a fight like Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje was. Khabib is going to be wanting to keep that range because Khabib is a smart fighter. He doesn't want to brawl, so he's going to start moving a lot more, but that movement is exactly what Justin Gaethje wants, because then he can invade that space where you have to throw back and where you have to reply. And the more you reply, the more openings you have for Justin Gaethje to counter and knock you out, because Justin Gaethje is a powerful fighter. Tony Ferguson was never going to be able to really knock out Khabib Nurmagomedov with one hit. Neither was Dustin Poirier going to be able to do that. Conor had a great chance of knocking him out with a great timed left straight, but other punches that Conor throws are more setup punches for his left straight. With Justin Gaethje, there are no setup punches. His left hook is as strong as his right hook. His jabs and straights are powerful punches, and any real loaded shot that Justin throws is a knockout punch. So when Justin comes forward and Khabib is moving around on the back foot, you can expect Justin Gaethje to throw jabs, feints, snap a lot of leg kicks, stop Khabib from moving around, make Khabib engage in a close range fight, and in that position, Khabib is in a world of trouble, even in a lot more trouble than what Conor McGregor could have put him in, because we saw what Conor was able to do. He was able to come forward, pressure him, but the problem with Conor is there's only one big shot at a time. There is no continuous string of powerful punches. It is just one big left straight that can connect and just put your lights out. But with Gaethje, it is just a wave of powerful punches that can knock you out. So where Khabib was able to just avoid one big shot and get out of the way, there is no one big shot that Khabib can avoid. There are many big shots that he has to avoid. And what will Khabib be able to do in that position? Like I said, he doesn't have the best head movement. His greatest head movement is his ability to move around with moving his head, obviously. But if he's made a stationary target while being pressured back, where can Khabib move around? He has to move his head, and the more he utilizes head movement while being a stationary target, the more room Justin Gaethje has to really unload his leg kicks, body shots, hooks. It is just a complete nightmare. So Khabib, he has to do everything to avoid being pressured more than ever. Why? Because of this. For example, let's take Tony Ferguson. Tony can pressure Khabib. He can come forward, he can hit him from the outside with long range jabs, straights, but these punches are not going to knock him out. These punches can keep Khabib still in the fight, and these punches can actually work against Tony Ferguson, because the more he throws and the more he is in the groove of combining shots and all of that, Tony Ferguson is kind of losing his footing, and he can actually get turned around and shot in on. Because if Tony Ferguson loses the pressure on Khabib, Khabib can reposition himself, turn around, and then shoot him for a takedown, right? Then he can get the fight back in his control, because that is exactly all Khabib needs, just one single grab onto a limb, and from there he can change the fight around. Because Tony is a fighter who throws a lot of different shots, but he throws a lot, and that is his exact strong suit, because he can keep his opponents busy and he can keep throwing and he can keep winning. That is the most important part. But Justin Gaethje is not like that. He is very economical, he is very smart, and he is very efficient. And the more efficient he is, the more dangerous he becomes, because no punches will go to waste, no kick will go to waste, and the less Justin Gaethje is wasting punches and attacks, the less openings Khabib Nurmagomedov has to get away. Because Khabib, when he fought Dustin Poirier, Dustin was never a really good offensive fighter in terms of keeping his opponents pressured, because Dustin likes to move around, find his range, and then throw some big shots, one punch at a time mainly. Conor McGregor, he likes to pressure his opponents, he's very economical, but he likes to set up one big blow, and that blow is the left straight. Tony Ferguson, he's a great fighter at coming forward. He throws a lot of punches, a lot of attacks, but these do not really have a lot of power behind them, so they don't really demand as much respect. And that is exactly what we saw against Gaethje. Tony had some great success with hitting him, but he never really had the moments where he was able to just really demand respect and really make Justin Gaethje back off from him. Justin was always in his face. Justin was always there. And that is exactly what most opponents, I would have to say all all opponents that Khabib has fought never really presented. Let's do a brief overview. Edson Barboza likes to move around at a kicking range. Michael Johnson likes to use his speed on the outside and really catch opponents off guard. Dustin Poirier likes to slowly move around, pop his jab, and really connect with great hooks and catch opponents off guard. Conor McGregor likes to pressure his opponents and make them commit to a mistake that he can counter. Khabib Nurmagomedov never gave in to a mistake, so he had to force Conor to throw on him. And like I said, when Conor throws, it is predominantly to set up one big final blow, which means he throws one big shot at a time, which you really have to worry about. All the other shots are kind of a smoke screen that you have to get through, and Khabib was able to get through them. If we take a look at Ally Quinta was a very passive fighter. He was very worried about getting shot in on by Khabib and getting taken down, and because of that, he made himself a pretty stationary target with not too much footwork and not too much danger coming back at Khabib, which really opened up his guard, and Khabib took great advantage of this and completely jabbed his face in. Great performance. Khabib is a very smart fighter, like I said. He never puts himself in a position where he has to take risks. He never wants to be in a position where he has to depend on quick exits that he has to take and then get the fight back in his control. He wants to be in control all throughout the fight. But the main difference is Khabib is in control when he is on the mat, and when he has his opponents tired out, then he can allow the fight to get back on the feet and still remain in control. But Justin Gaethje is different. He doesn't back down. He comes forward. He's going to be pressuring Khabib, who's going to be moving around, and he's not going to be giving him too many windows to exit on. Gaethje won't be overthrowing. He will throw exactly what he needs. And the thing is this, if it comes to a point where Khabib's movement is just a bit too much for somebody like Justin Gaethje, we have to also remind ourselves that Justin Gaethje has great footwork of his own. Khabib is not going to be finding Justin Gaethje in his face all the time. Justin is very smart. He comes forward when he needs to. He backs up when he needs to. But he always remains the aggressive fighter whose physical strength and power prevails. And because of that, I believe that throughout the entirety of the stand-up exchanges, however long this may be, because obviously at some point Khabib is going to be figuring a way out to shoot on the legs. But the real question is this: will he shoot on the back foot or on the front foot? I will tell you this right now. I can comfortably say that the majority of takedowns that Khabib was shooting for will be takedowns off of the back foot, because Justin Gaethje will always be in a position where he won't be backed up by Khabib all too much, especially in the opening of the fight. Now, what does this really mean? Well, it means that in the opening of the fight, Khabib is going to be pressured and he's going to be having a very hard time shooting in on Justin Gaethje. But the fact of the matter is this: Khabib Nurmagomedov is a tremendous chain grappler. One takedown didn't work? Great. If he has a hold of your leg, that is all he needs, because then he is in control. And when that control is locked in, he can reverse you and he can start pressuring you. And once you feel that strength and once you feel his wrestling, you become defensively minded instantly. And in this area, I will have to say that Justin Gaethje is a fighter who is going to be having, I believe, one of the better chances of scrambling away from this. His D1 All-American background is going to be perfect for him to really get himself a chance to get out of it, because once he is backed up, pinned up against the fence and taken down, there is nobody, and I mean nobody, that can regain control off the back against Khabib. That is a reality that we all must just face. So let's talk about the wrestling or the grappling department in general. When we're going to be analyzing the grappling department, we're going to be seeing that Khabib is going to be obviously the better fighter at being able to control his opponents over Justin Gaethje, because Gaethje never really shoots in for a takedown. He doesn't really depend on his wrestling anymore, but he does have the ability to scramble. And if he can scramble and get back up on his feet and reset the action and then press Khabib Nurmagomedov, he has the opening to come forward, chop down his legs, and connect with a huge hook that can put Khabib in serious trouble and out. Because the only way Justin Gaethje can really secure himself a victory is by doing that, continuously being able to pressure Khabib, never let Khabib get in control, and with that, he can guarantee himself control of the action. And by controlling the action, he can pace himself, he can see the range, he can see whenever Khabib will shoot in, and from there, he can get himself a decisive victory. Now, I believe Justin Gaethje's best odds of winning will be by stopping Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't believe that throughout a 5-round fight, Khabib will ever be giving up on shooting him for the legs, and I don't really believe believe that in a 5-round fight against somebody like Gaethje, he's not going to be able to use his footwork and get a hold of him. And when he gets a hold of him, he will most likely pin him against the fence, and as soon as he's pinned up against the fence, the worst has already happened and the takedown is pretty much inevitable. But you never know. Justin Gaethje's wrestling background can really serve himself to be useful in order to really have great defense and avoid getting taken down. But I'm not really too sure about that because Khabib is just one of a kind. And if he gets pinned up against the fence and taken down, it is a wrap, because then he will have to worry about getting taken down again. And as soon as that enters his mind, the fight is pretty much a foregone conclusion. So with that said, this is a fight where whoever takes the first step backwards is going to be the fighter who will start losing. But nonetheless, it is a fight that is very, very competitive. People just don't see it yet. And when the fight happens to take place, whenever it may be, we will be treated with one of the best stylistic matchups Khabib will ever have. Will Justin win or will Khabib win? I don't know. But one thing is for sure, neither fighter will be considered a pushover by the other. But in time, we shall all know the truth, and we will all know the real victor by the end of it. But up until then, leave in the comment section down below who you think will win come fight night. As always, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.